In this video, we're going to look at how to set out floor tiles. So we've got the tiles and all the tools we need. We're ready to start, but before we just jump in and start fixing them, we need to think a little bit about the layout, the pattern of the tiles, and also the setting out. And all that means is where we start the tiling, left and right, and front and back, because that's going to dictate where the joints end up, and more importantly, it's going to dictate where the cuts end up. At this stage, we would highly recommend dry laying at least some of your floor tiles to double check what the pattern you're thinking of laying actually looks like in the room. So I'm starting here by just laying out the tiles on the floor with the right size spacer between them. I would always suggest wearing gloves for this because sometimes the edges can be a bit sharp. And the bigger tiles especially can be heavier than you think, so using rubberized non-slip gloves can help you grip them easier. Here I've decided to see what a herringbone pattern looks like, but then I try a linear brick pattern lengthways, which makes the bathroom look longer and thinner. So I turn everything 90 degrees to see what that looks like, and then stagger every other course to make a brick bond pattern. So I think I'm settled on this brick bond pattern with the main joints going across the room rather than along the room, just to make it feel a little bit wider. And a little tip from me, at this point, it's a really good idea to invite in anyone with a vested interest like husbands, wives and partners, just to comment on this sort of pattern rather than leaving it until you're halfway through laying it. It's just a little bit too late by then. So we've agreed on the pattern, but I don't want to lay in this position because I can see over here I'm going to end up with a slither of tile, which isn't going to look very good. And at the same time on this side, I've got plenty of tile to spare. So I'm now going to take all of these up and I'm going to mark a centre line in both directions in this room to make sure that these tiles are centred, and then to just double check that I don't end up with a slither on either side. To mark a centre line of your room, just measure the width of your room at one end, halve the measurement and mark it on the floor. It's then important to do the same at the other end because rooms' widths are not always the same at each end. Then simply join these two marks up. Here I'm using a chalk line. You could use a straight edge and a pencil. In the opposite direction, measure the length of the room and then mark the centre of the room on the line. Then using a board lined up on your line and a square, or something that you know is exactly 90 degrees, mark a line perpendicular to the first. This will give you a good reference line in each direction to work from and the centre of the room. With a bit more dry laying from these lines, this will show you if you need to adjust your starting point, say by half a tile, to avoid ending up with any small cuts right next to the walls. For this job, you're going to need a tape measure, a straight edge, a square or something that you know is exactly 90 degrees, and a pair of gloves to protect your hands. That's all there is to setting out floor tiles, and I will see you in the next video.